Welcome to the Knowledge for Men show. Your life will never be the same.
Your level of success will seldom exceed your level of personal development.
I want to die empty of regret. I want to die empty of my best work. We don't understand who we are. Instead, we're living out somebody else's narrative.
What one man can do, another man can do. If it's been done, it can be done again.
Being yourself and being your truest, most authentic self in every moment. If it scares you or makes you a little afraid, do it. Follow your heart and your gut.
The first stage, I think, is finding you, like finding out who I am today.
Stuff will not work. You will have things that fail. Success is when you're a happy, fulfilled person. How do you define success?
It's your life, and you are the creator of the movie script that is your life story.
All right, guys, welcome to the show. I'm here with Jaret Grossman. He's a life strategist and CEO of Muscle Prodigy and author of Cracking the Code on Success, Leadership, and Leaving a Legacy. Jaret, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, man. I'm really looking forward to this.
All right. Awesome to have you here. And Jaret, let's dive in now with a favorite success quote or some sort of saying that you've lived by that's helped you on your journey.
Yeah, so this is a great quote that I stumbled upon. It says that he that gives should never remember, and he that receives should never forget. So always teaches me about humility and just really to just recognize the blessings that you have in life.
I like it. And now, was there a point when that quote really hit you? Were you the opposite, or were you kind of always on this path here?
No, it wasn't that I was on the opposite, but I really intensified my purpose for why I do what I do, essentially. So I stumbled upon it. I was like that articulated what I'm doing, essentially.
Okay. And today, like what is your purpose?
I feel like, and I boil this down to one sentence, which is to impart wisdom so people can better understand themselves, essentially. And I think there's a lot of power if you could take what you do and articulate it in a sentence, and really understand what your true purpose is. And then from there, everything else in your life should bow out reflecting that, essentially.
Yeah, I like that. That's great. And so, take us back like a couple years or so. Like, how did you get started with what you do here?
Yeah, so my story began, I was a skinny little kid, got picked on, bullied, and I've told this story dozens and millions of times kind of thing. But basically, I got beat up by a kid younger than me and was embarrassed and hit the weights. I realized that in order to change the world, I've got to change, and I changed my body. And through that physical transformation, that's when I recognized that change is possible within me, but also other people started gravitating toward me to say, hey, how did you do it? Can you train me in the gym and stuff like that? And that's when I really just understood the art of change, the art of influence, leadership, and why people do what they do, studying just behaviors and what allows somebody to start something new and stick to it and finish it, and why some people are successful, why some people aren't, what are the habits that go into that, and most importantly, what the purpose of every individual on earth is. So it just took me down that wormhole to just understand human behavior and stuff, and I've been obsessed with finding answers. Yeah.
So it started with having a challenging upbringing, and you started fitness, you started really transforming yourself, and of course there's a whole journey in that. But then people started asking you questions like, how did you do that? And this was just stuff you were doing, this was just a part of your day-to-day hustle. And you didn't realize that, wow, there's a lot of people here who are interested in this stuff here that maybe did you find it easy, but others did not find it easy?
Yeah. You know what? I guess at the time I really took to learning fitness and how the body responds to training and nutrition like a sponge kind of thing. And my body responded pretty fast. I gained 50 pounds in one summer and then eventually worked my way up to 215 pounds and then got down to 6% body fat. And so there was a lot of work that went into it, but it was almost like I was on a subconscious autopilot to get there in a way that it was just like, there was no like heavy deliberation in my mind, like some other tasks that I had to take up throughout my life, for instance, law school, whatnot, where it was a lot of mental effort to be able to do that. At that period of my life, it wasn't much mental effort for me to be able to do that. I tapped into something really deep that I wanted and whatnot, and a lot of subconscious takeover. And I think that's where it starts for a lot of us. And successful people are doing a lot of things on subconscious autopilot in a way. But then in order to duplicate that success, and especially how to teach others, you really have to consciously understand what made you good at things. And that's where I was able to take a step back and then really analyze, again, human behavior and psychology and all that stuff.
And so what do you think it was for you that made you good at things?
Yeah, so I think that it starts with an ambition and role models that you look up to. I think that's highly important. And once you have those mentors in your life who believe in you, then that belief gets transferred into you. And then you start getting bit by a bug that this is possible, right? And that's the first step. And then from there, you got to have sort of a good strategy and roadmap. And for me, I guess I knew this at a young age, was to model the best, like find out what other people did that was working and then do it yourself, apply it. But I understood also that the body responds and reacts to everybody a little bit differently. One person is going to respond a little differently than somebody else to something. So I use myself as a guinea pig kind of thing in terms of, let me try this person's training routine. Let me try this person's diet. And then let's see. And then if that doesn't work, I check myself in the mirror 4 times a day to see if there's any changes. And then if that didn't work, start a new one and then stick to it. And so there's a lot of just hunger within me to want to change essentially and get to a certain level that I knew I could be at. And I think with everybody, if let's say fitness, you might not look like Greg Plitt ever looked, but there's a certain best version of yourself. And I think like you may not make the same money that Warren Buffett is making, but there's a certain level that is going to make you probably feel really happy once you get to it. And you got to really chase it in a way, but you also have to enjoy the process while you're climbing, or it's going to be a very rigorous road. And once you get it, you have to really enjoy it, or it's all for naught essentially, because there's a lot of people who have achieved a lot of stuff, but they're still miserable. And that's a real failure, obviously.
So I want to touch on that, but how long do you stick with something before moving on? It sounds like you said you're a guinea pig. You're trying all these different things over and over again. Well, how do you know if you should keep going, or what if you should correct, or maybe you're making mistakes? So if you could talk about that.
Yeah. So I think in terms of, and for me to articulate now, it's going to be a little different than what I did. I don't recommend, doing something for several years, a decade of trial and error. That's not the best way to do it. Modeling the best is the best way to do it, and then making little adjustments and improvements here and there. For me, it was that ambition that always allowed me to just keep on going. And whether that's, innate or something that you learn, I think it's probably at different periods of your life, you're going to get ambitious about different things, not necessarily about what somebody else is ambitious about, but something that'll take a hold of you and you'll be able to push through plateaus or barriers that don't seem, normal in a way. And that's where I was at that period of my life and in terms of fitness. So I just knew, look at the results. And if you're not getting the result, change your approach, do something else, and then stick with that and see how it works. Give it adequate time. Don't just chalk it up as, it didn't work after one day, right. Make sure that you gave it adequate time and then see if it actually worked. And if you got good results, then that's probably something to chalk up. I live by this quote from Bruce Lee, which is basically extract the useful, discard the useless, where back in his martial arts days, he learned lots of different disciplines and he understood that there's power in understanding lots of them, whether it's jujitsu, kempo, or whatnot. So I analogize the same, that there's lots of great techniques in the bodybuilding community, for instance, just like there are the fitness model community or CrossFit or powerlifting or elite athletes, what they're doing, and differences in terms of basketball training as opposed to football training or wrestling. And there's lots of takeaways that you could take away from a lot of them. And that was my philosophy throughout life, was that don't just blanket something as wrong or right, but really sift out what is useful for you.
And that's, this has me, you're talking about Bruce Lee, and this has me thinking obviously about martial arts. And I think that's what a lot of mixed martial arts is it's really taking the best, strategies and aspects of each martial art. And that is literally what is just called MMA today.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the whole tournament was based off of in the early 90s, was seeing which martial art was actually going to be the most effective. And obviously jiu-jitsu was very effective, but also it had its downsides, as we see later in that whole series. But I like that, really taking what is useful and then, discarding what is not. And I think that's what really makes it uniquely you, is you get to decide like what is useful and what is not. And that's how you kind of create your own identity and even kind of method for success, just simply following what others have done and then navigating your way through that. You mentioned earlier, you said, I said, I want to touch on this. I want to come back to it. You said, some people can be, widely successful, but absolutely miserable at the same time. Well, what do you think's going on there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that there's different muscles, internal muscles is what I'm talking about. And one can be you're an action taker, right? And these people take action like it's nobody's business. They're so good at it. And they don't have these other muscles that are built up, the emotional muscles of gratitude, for instance, of happiness. And that's something that you got to build up, or, just like you attack and you're great at business or whatever it is or achieving, you got to work on this other side of the coin. And that's why, back to what you were saying in terms of the MMA, and we're seeing this in terms of the entrepreneurial age. You really need to become what I call a specialized generalist. You need to be very good at a lot of different things, or you're not going to make it. It doesn't mean that you're usually going to be very good at one thing, but if you're only as strong as your weakest link. If you don't, study, let's say, for me, it was getting a law degree because I don't want to get screwed over by lawyers, that's in business, that's a huge part of it. Just understanding the legal landscape. Warren Buffett says the most important thing you could learn in education, your educational career, is accounting, right? So you have to understand this stuff in terms of business acumen if you're going to make it and succeed in this entrepreneurial information, into an implementation age ultimately. So we're moving away from sort of the single skill sets, and MMA, like you mentioned, the ones who are succeeding have a good background of lots of different things. It doesn't mean that they're not a specialist in terms of this one core principle of theirs, but you have to balance out your life, or it will be the constant source of stress in your life.
Yeah.
So you could have, great fitness, for instance, and other areas of your life, your relationship is crashing and burning, your finances aren't doing well. You got to take a little time away from the gym, and you got to focus on your career. Probably you got to focus on time with your, family a little bit more, and vice versa. You could have your finances, incredible, and your relationships, your family is awesome, but your health isn't there, and you got to dedicate time there. Shift your priorities a little bit.
Yeah, I think this is common for guys. I mean, women too, but mostly male audience listening, for guys who are high performing, where they are those action takers. Or they're at least trying to take action, focus all their energy on accomplishing a goal, which is absolutely important, and it should be done. It should be a part of the journey. But what about spending time with the family? What about spending time? I know a lot of guys who are crushing it financially, 7-figure earners, but single, awesome. and like can't, they're just masturbating, watching porn. I mean, they're just so focused on one aspect of their life through the lens of everyone else. It might appear that this guy's like got it made, but when you dig deeper and or if you really get to know some of these people, you'll find that their lives, it's not exactly what you might think when they clock out of work or when they come home or when they leave the office. I think the high performing guy, I think what can help him get to that next level is what we're talking about, is really balancing out and having a love life, or spending times with friends and relaxing, and maybe not working so much, and allowing yourself time to rejuvenate and relax and come at it Monday morning at a level 10, rather than, you're just constantly grinding. Any engine's gonna blow up, no matter how great it's built, if you just run it, full power all the time.
Absolutely. You're spot on, man. And for those people, I would just invite them to explore the why behind why they're doing it. And the real why is probably to increase the quality of your life and others, right? So financially, if you're doing it and your why is, well, I need to make a certain amount of money so that I can be better than Joe down the street. It's this constant keeping up with the Joneses type mentality that often leaves you in pain and suffering because you're making, $10 million and you're comparing yourself to people who are probably making 50 million, 100 million. And because your value system is, well, I'm better than somebody who makes $1 million, right? Because that's what your value system is. Then you can't help but feel inferior to somebody who's making 100 million.
Right.
And then when you make 100 million, now there's going to be somebody who's making $1 billion. That's just the way that it goes, right? So it doesn't mean don't make $1 billion, but you have to have deeper reasons of why you're doing it. And it's got to fall back on, are you really increasing the quality of your life and others? Because maybe it's not sticking to this drain or this lane of making money, for instance, in this mode while everything else is crashing and burning in your life. Maybe you have to attend to this and get the foundation set, and then the skyscraper can go up more easily rather than it crashing and then you have to rebuild the skyscraper again and again.
Yeah. What do you think is holding most men back from more happiness in their lives?
Just an understanding or perspective of what will make them happy. I think that really is what's holding them back, right? Because you could have some information about what you think will make you happy, but if it's faulty, if it's not going to be serving to you, then you're going to end up in a place that you didn't want to end up in. Where
do you think guys should start? Like, what kind of questions should they be asking, or what would that journey look like to really move in the direction that's actually going to make them more happy, and not trying to discount that? Like, look, you got to work hard. Like, everyone wants to be successful, and
100%.
It's great to make more money, but also just, be mindful of why you're doing this.
Yeah. So a great place to start is you got to have the destination ultimately. So usually some people have glimpses of the future, right? Where they are. If I snap my fingers, I said, where are you going to be 10 years from now? There's probably an image that pops up for most people. And it's usually a grayscale image. It's like this gray image. And instead of just brushing on the rug saying, well, I don't know why I get that, really bring it to the forefront of your mind, bring it into like crystal clear focus, and consciously do what Arnold Schwarzenegger said was his greatest subconscious gift, the art of visualization. Bring it into detailed color. Who are the people around there? What are the colors of the floors or the desk or the chair or whatnot? And actually, Arnold used to say he saw the people's faces screaming Arnold, Arnold, and him on bodybuilding competition. Yeah. Years before he actually won it. So bring this into crystal clear focus, and now write down sort of a movie. You don't want to just take it from an image, a movie. Where were you just before? Where are you going right after that? And now you have something like tangible, but also write the qualities of who you are at that period of time, because that's what you're really after. You're not after the actual thing ultimately. And so those qualities are really your compass of what you need to gain. And it's probably somebody who's in a beautiful state, who's happier and whatnot. So you could start building those muscles right now. But for a more scientific approach in terms of like, here is where I am and I need to identify the gap kind of thing. This is what I walk my clients through sort of, is to assess where you are in these 8 areas of life. So number one, I call mission. It's basically your career empowerment, and rate this on a scale of 1 to 10. Do you dread going to work, or do you feel like you are literally on a mission? You can't wait to get up at that 10. Where in between those two extremes are you? Abundance, that is financial stability and so forth. And don't compare yourself to anybody else. This is just an internal representation of where you think you should be at this period of time financially. Another aspect is family. How strong are your relationships? Your soulmate. Do you have a soulmate? Do you really connect and have strong relationships? Because I do believe family is the brick of society. We're not meant to be an individualistic society. We're meant to be a family society for sure. And then foundation is health. Your internally, hopefully everything's going okay. Physique, are you happy with that? Your energy levels, do you have a sky high energy levels all day long? So I call that foundation. The next one is control. This is managing your emotions. Can you reframe negative emotions in an instant, or are you at effect to everything? Do you live with anxiety, depression nonstop, right? Rate that 1 to 10. We've got connection, a spiritual connection to a higher power, for instance, to yourself, to the world, the universe at large. People meditate, but this would fall into that connection category in a way. And then we've got wisdom, which is how much mental training you put yourself through, how many new skills you acquire, how much growth you go through on a daily basis. And then the last one is legacy, which is ultimately what are you leaving on this earth? Will people really be saddened by your loss? Not in an egotistical way, but in a way that you will really impacted the lives of other people and move them. Will people really, remember what you stood for?
And so when a guy does something like this, he might feel he might realize, oh man, I got a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
When you really look at all the different aspects here. And
absolutely.
Do you know someone who is level 10 in all of these areas?
10 in all areas? Probably not. And people who by all standards should be at a 10, or like society would call them a 10 in all areas, they wouldn't call themselves a 10 in all areas. You know what I mean? There's always progress. That's the name of the game. And because progress very much is the destination. But here's sort of your compass. And if you could get a 9 in all areas, so it's like a little bit to go or whatnot, then you're on the right path. But if you've got like 1s and 2s and you got 3s and 4s, these are the constant sources of stress in your life, whether you like to think of it that way or not. But this is where you have the problems in your life. If finances are at a 2 or a 3 or whatnot, then every time a bill comes into the mail, it's a tension that comes over your body. It's an anxiety. It's a frustration. I don't know how I'm going to do this. You don't want to live in that pain for the rest of your life. So that means taking tangible action steps to be able to increase that, whether it's your health. I mean, if you don't have a good, internal health going on, you're fearing whether you're going to live for the next 10 years or not, and whether your kids are going to see you anymore. You got to get that fixed right away. So this is where the stress of your life is, and it won't go away until you fix it.
Yeah, absolutely. Which one of these do you think most men struggle with the most? So everyone's going to be different, but if we're to look at like kind of just you coach, you worked with a lot of guys, you probably use a lot of the same format here. Like, which one do you think most men struggle with?
Most men, I think, struggle with control for sure, and younger men, they struggle with the first two, mission and abundance. That they're not sure what they want to do with their lives. Essentially, they're still trying to find their purpose, and then financially, they're not where they want to be. So.
Okay. And so the control,
mm-hmm.
This one here, you feel is most men are struggling with this, like having control over their lives, like over their emotions.
Emotions. Yeah.
Okay.
100%. So something happens in their life and they don't know how to process it, they're at effect to it. Right. So it's like someone pisses them off and immediately it's a response of anger. Right. So what it comes down to is you're not reframing this thing that would seem negative to just understand how it's actually useful and positive to you, and being able to manage it and take action in a particular way. It's sort of like I analogize it to a warning light on the car. So something bad happens in our life, let's say, right? And imagine that the warning light came on your car and it's basically saying you're running out of gas, right? So I could reframe that a few different ways. The first is I could be really depressed about what just happened, which is I could say, oh my God, I used up a lot of gas. I should not have done that. So there's regret in our lives. We replay memories of our past over and over again, right? Or I could be really worried about what's going to happen in the future. So I could draw up all kinds of what if scenarios. What if I run out of gas on the highway? What if I'm on the highway? Do I have to run? I have to go run. But all it's telling you to do is go to the gas station and fill up. So any problem that you have in your life, whether it's the past or the future, I can almost guarantee it that it's telling you to take action now in some capacity. You're just missing it. And they manifest themselves as warning lights. They come on way before. But again, just like if you saw the warning light and you still continue to drive for 60 miles, you're going to be in much more trouble than if you listen to the warning light right away. So you're going to get thoughts throughout your life, and they seem like they're negative, but in reality, it's helping you, it's serving you, it's getting you to do something, and you have to listen to it.
I think that's good, is that these things that we see as danger or warning signs are actually there to help us, to guide us, to prevent something much more like disastrous from happening in the future. It's there to serve us. So if we ignore these warning lights, let's say we just keep going and we don't listen because we think it's too painful to go to the gas station, or that's the analogy, but it's too painful to have that tough conversation. It's too painful to quit the job. It's too painful to ask her out or break up or whatever it is. What happens to a man like this who ignores the warning lights in life?
it's only going to get worse, right? I mean, you could brush it under the rug for so long, but you're just kicking the can down the road. Eventually, you're going to have to face it, and it's going to be harder to face it then than it is right now.
Yeah.
So squash it while small, as opposed to when it becomes Godzilla, essentially. And that's just leadership. That's just understanding that you don't know all the information. That's what makes a leader is that despite the lack of information, they go forth first, and they're not going to wait for the answer. They're going to figure it out themselves, essentially. And then they're a scout. They go ahead, they see if it's okay, and then they bring others there. So it's just making the decision in your mind, and it's pretty powerful.
Mm-hmm. So if you don't face it's going to face you.
Yes,
That's what I'm getting.
I love that.
If you don't take care of it, it's coming after you. And so for the younger guys, you said it's kind of the mission, the abundance, like guys lacking a sense of direction or a purpose and financial stability, things like this. Is this just because they're young and they, this is just a part of where they're at in their life, or can they be doing things right now to get that mission and start building that abundance?
Yeah, I think the younger Chinese are tough age for both men and women, and men, it hits them a little bit later. I think women mature a little faster in this regard. But the education system is broke, as you kind of know, right? So they don't teach us practical stuff. And even in law school, to be honest, there's certain things that you get a great education from, but it's not real practical advice that you get on the job kind of thing, in terms of actually being able to apply what you know. That's really, really powerful stuff. So you have to do a lot of self-education in that regard. And a lot of these people are, younger 20s, they're in massive debt, whether it's $100,000 because they went to a university to binge drink for 4 years, essentially, so then what happened is you kick the can down the road for 4 years, essentially, to then come to the conclusion of what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. That now it's going to be a little more painful because now you have to climb out of $100,000 hole on top of finding everything that you want to do. So it's tough, because this is sort of the cultural hypnosis that we live in a way. And this isn't to say that formal education is not important, and it is very important for special skills. For instance, I don't want to go to a doctor who just says I'm a doctor, right? I want to make sure that he actually did the training and the school and so forth, right? So there is a need for it, but the business model needs to be revamped ultimately, and there needs to be a lot of self-education in terms of the individual. You can't just rely on other people to give you the answers, and you have to become an independent thinker. So that's what I help, a lot of clients.
For those guys, what would you say are like your top 3 places for self-education? Like, what are things that you do? Obviously, this is a form of it here, but like,
absolutely,
what have you found top 3 have helped you learn the most through self-education?
Find like 3 people that you really admire and look up to, or doing what you want to do, and study literally everything you can get your hands on those people. I mean, every single interview that they've ever had, every book that they've ever put out. And they're going to leave you lots of clues in terms of your journey, but you're going to have to replay interviews over and over and again to understand their answer, and read their things over and over again, because things are going to make sense to you at different periods of your life. And look, YouTube is a great resource to be able to do that. For instance, a library in terms of books, if you can't afford, professional mentorship and all that stuff, and actually seeking them out to pick their brain. But what I recommend for people who are also looking to get a mentor is that, the top dog that everybody looks to is pretty taken up. He's not going to mentor you probably. So find somebody in between where you are right now, where that top dog is. There's probably somebody in the middle. And a good way to do that is you've got to be very selfless in that process, meaning what can you do to offer that person value, and don't just come to them looking to suck value. Yeah. It's got to be not even a two-way street. It's got to be one-way street of you helping them essentially at first, and then but naturally, if you're on a path of progression, like you're really growing, you're busting all seams of the envelope kind of thing, people are going to walk into your life and recognize that. It's happened with me. It's happened with lots of people that I've worked with, coached, and so forth, that people come into their life and want to join that movement, so to speak.
Absolutely. Yeah. I like being able to offer value. I get people who will say like, hey, Andrew, I'd love to just pick your brain. I don't, that sounds horrible. Yeah. If you think about it, it sounds like a bird, like picking at a brain, like a crow, like a dead person, like chewing apart the brain. There's like no value, or like, Andrew, I'd love to come to your office and just watch you work. I was like, what? What do you mean?
Yeah.
Like, you're just going to sit there and I'm just going to work and just like nothing in return. Like, at least let me just bring you lunch, something like that. But not to say that I'm on some sort of pedestal or anything like that. I'm just giving some funny examples
100%,
that I think we can relate with. But yeah, the one thing people like, how can I offer value? The one thing that I have found is one, like mentors love seeing someone and helping someone who has momentum. Like if the person has momentum already, it's like, oh, why would I not help that person get to that next step? They can kind of see themselves in you. You're hungry, you're moving, like you're already moving, you have results on the table, and you just need like a couple questions so that you can get to that next step. So you can go from second to third base. And when you have momentum, I think it's very like, I want to say like people want to gravitate towards that. It's like, this guy's got momentum. He's moving forward. So like when you really step into, what is it that you want to do and you start doing it, you said like people start showing up. Like I get random Facebook messages from people. I'm like, wow, like they like want to help me and add value and they see what I'm doing. And it's really cool. Just like you do you, and people show up, but they won't show up if you're like just stagnant, like not doing anything. Like it's like, you haven't started. I don't know where to help you. I mean, you're not moving.
Yeah, motion so important. And you're right. Like even when we want to help somebody out, it's almost like every fiber of our being will deny somebody who's looking to leech or looking to just suck. It's just because the universe doesn't want to reward that. Because all it is about you. It's not about we, right? And the mission of life is we. So if you're just looking to bum off of somebody else and mooch off of somebody else, subconsciously people would just recognize, I do not want to help this guy out, even if they are a good person. And you can't take that personally if that was you, but you got to find a better way in terms of how do you help them.
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's dive into the knowledge round here. I just want to ask you a few last rapid fire questions here. So are you ready for the knowledge round here, Jaret?
I'm ready, man. Awesome stuff.
Welcome to the knowledge round, where the guests will be asked rapid fire questions to give the audience invaluable pieces of wisdom to help transform their lives. Starting in 3, 2, 1, showtime.
Very much in line with what we've been talking about, but what advice would you give to someone who is absolutely lost with their purpose? They're not sure where to start, not sure what direction that they should go in.
So first things first, I would say write down on a piece of paper all the people who you look up to. And then based on what we were talking about, write down the specific qualities of what those people represent that you want to have. And then that should be a very good indicator of there's probably a gap or deficiency in terms of there's an inferior version of you and a superior version of you. And the superior version of you probably has a lot of those qualities or all of them. And you might have some of them but mainly what it is you're looking up to those people and those qualities because you're hyper focusing there, your subconscious, because you're deficient there. And you've got to close the gap. You've got to learn. So that's very important. And then in terms of like finding a career that can intertwine with what you were really meant to do, that's where the magic happens. And that's sort of a freedom game, essentially, to be able to do what you want whenever you want, kind of thing. Where do you spend time procrastinating about? So let's say that you've got a project to do or you got something going on and it's due on Friday, and every day up until that Thursday night before you're going to do it, you're procrastinating, probably doing something. Where's your time going? It's probably going in a few areas that seem destructive in a way, but there's probably a few things or one thing in particular that you are always drawn to, that probably millions and billions of dollars change hands in that industry. And now whether it's, you write music, whether you write poetry, whatever it is, it's probably something that you have a skill in. You do have to have a skill and you have to be good at it, but something where you're really passionate about, that you love. And if you could find what that is, and it's usually where you spend time procrastinating, and find out how to make that first a side hustle or something that you can hedge your bets with. So you have your stable income. For instance, I recommend like working a 9 to 5, and then nights and weekends, what are you doing? It's got to be towards that activity. Learn how to make that a career. So for instance, there's certain, women that I work with, for instance, where they they love shopping. So it, like, become a personal shopper for other people, so it seems unrealistic. It seems stupid until you find out that somebody's actually done it and they're making 6 figures doing it or 7 figures doing it. Right. So model those people who are actually doing it, as unrealistic as it seems. So whatever you're passionate about, maybe it's music, maybe it's sports, find a way to make some money in it. And once you get sort of like, if you can make, as stupid as it sounds, I study, for instance, like internet marketing and stuff like this. I had to. So John Reese, famous internet marketer, something he recommends to his clients is make your first buck, right? Like make your first dollar. And then once you do, something goes off in the brain that's like, this works. I can actually do this. And then you could scale it. It's all a numbers game that you could just scale.
Yeah. So. Absolutely. Yeah. That first, do you remember your first dollar that you made? Like you were working on?
Yeah. Online. Yeah. Our product, MP45, basically that digital product, but also just the first dollar I remember I sold a deal on an advertiser, a supplement company for a year contract. And that was like this euphoric feeling. And it was amazing, man.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember there's 2 things. I remember one, when I put Google AdWords on my website and I got my first 3 cents or something. I was like, what? It worked. Yeah. Like I couldn't believe it. I got 3 cents. Like it was nuts. And then I remember when I sold my first ebook off my website, and I remember I saw this payment come in, and it was like $10 or something. And I was like, oh my gosh, man, that just bought me my lunch. Like it was just so cool to like see something work. And I love when you do all this work, you make all this stuff happen, and then it works. It's like it works. Right? It's like it's not about the money. It's like it works, and it's like what's next? Like if it works here, then what can it keep working? Something like that. What's a morning ritual that you just have to do every morning?
So get myself into a positive state. It used to be very elaborate in the sense like I used to do vigorous breathing and all kinds of incantations and screaming in my apartment at 4 a.m. until everybody heard me kind of thing. But it's changed over time. And then you feed your mind right away in the morning with something positive that puts you in a good mood. But I recommend always attacking the source of stress immediately. So there's one thing that's burning on your mind. And again, we mapped out sort of those 8 areas. Whatever you're deficient in, when you wake up in the morning, if you are on your purpose and your mission, that's where you're going to have the most energy. It's like you're going to get excited. It's going to pull you out of bed, and you want to fix this thing because it's been the source of stress for a long, long time, and you're sick of it. You get fed up. You got to attack that right away.
Yeah, really good. What's your one thing that you've done that has led to much of your success today?
One thing that I've done, follow my heart, trust my gut. As cliche as it is, it's just it leads you in the right direction and what you're supposed to be doing at each particular time, and just the more I follow it and listen to it, the more it takes me to where I need to go, I think.
Mm-hmm. And strategically, like for me, I could say like mine has been podcasting. Like I've been podcasting almost 3.5 or 4 years, and I haven't stopped. Like
I love it.
There's been times where I'm like, man, am I going to keep doing this? Like I just did over 300. Like, should I keep going? I'm like, yeah, let's go to 500. Maybe let's go to 1,000. But I haven't stopped, and there's a huge audience because of it. And like kind of tactically, what has been your one thing?
One thing is definitely tactically journal every kind of aha insight that you get, write it down, and then put it into practice right away. So apply it. So you learn something good from an internet marketer or whatever it is, and it's just like use it right away. Apply it, see if it works, test it out, and that's really, really powerful, important. And like YouTube for me was definitely a huge thing, getting on there, just like your podcast kind of thing. So exposure, putting yourself out there is highly important.
Yeah, great. Yeah, really good stuff. And so, your book, Cracking the Code on Success, Leadership, and Leaving a Legacy, just to give credit to you, but for yourself though, like what have been 3 of your most influential books that have helped you on your journey, and why?
The classic Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill, and another one, Outwitting the Devil. So I kind of combine those 2. Another one is How to Win Friends and Influence People from Dale Carnegie, and Warren Buffett's books, like Warren Buffett's Management Secrets, I think is unbelievable.
All right,
so
great, yeah.
Just understanding influence and how to leverage certain things.
Really cool. Yeah, some of the classics there. You can read those over and over again. Think and Grow Rich, Outwitting the Devil, How to Win Friends. I mean, the How to Win Friends and Influence People is so simple. Like you're almost just like, come on, like really? But if you actually go out and do them, it's a game changer. I used to have like a summary of How to Win Friends and Influence People on my phone. And like before, I used to go to these meetup events, like these networking events in San Diego for like business or personal development, whatever it was. And I would read this like 5 times before I'd get out of my car, and I'd go into these networking events, and I would just like, it would just change the game to like refresh How to Win Friends and Influence People before networking. And you just find yourself in having a lot more fun and connecting with a lot of high level people. Well,
awesome.
Yeah, really good books. And so this next question is more of a scenario for yourself, Jaret. So imagine you had 60 seconds with 20-year-old Jaret. If you could envision where he's at personally and professionally right now, even relationships, knowing what you now know today, and you could sit down with 20-year-old Jaret, what would you tell him to do and what would you tell him not to do?
Yeah, awesome question. So what would I tell him to do and not to do? Ultimately, the root of it is I would say stop stressing so much. I was very stressed out when I was younger, and things are going to sort of play out the way that they're going to play out. People are going to come into your life. You know, you can't control a lot of things. You didn't control your eye color, the hair color that you were born with, you know, what city you were born in, your family or whatnot. You know, there's a lot of things that are out of control. And I do believe that we have some choice in that aspect at some point in the timeline, whether it's our soul, a previous life, or whatever it is, you know, but not necessarily right now. So a lot of the stuff is going to happen the way that it happens. And that's from studying like people like Einstein, for instance, who really believed in like predeterminism, stuff like that. So just articulating that as best as I could in 60 seconds to just say that there's a purpose for everything and just go into it trying to find the beauty in things as opposed to what's wrong with it and why it's working for you and why everything is great even when you think that it's wrong.
Very good. Very good. And I think a lot of guys need to hear that. And is there an example that you could share, finding the beauty in it versus what's wrong with it?
Yeah, specific examples. It's more like interactions with people. I think a lot of times we drive people out of our life, let's say, because they hurt our feelings or whatever it is. And in reality, I like to view it as, this is getting deep on people, but I think your audience can handle it, is that like the movie Inception, a lot of it was, you know, it's a dream within a dream kind of thing, but it's really talking about different parts of your subconscious mind essentially manifesting out, and you're having conflict with your subconscious. So I think that we invite or provoke a lot of the conflict in our life from people based on who we are internally, intrinsically. And it's only until you grow into a higher form of yourself that you then get rid of that problem. And that's an internal game, totally. So I know that's a little deep, but
no, this is good. That's good.
Yeah.
I definitely think my audience can handle that. Absolutely.
Okay.
Very
Awesome.
high level group of guys listening right now. And yeah, so if we have to summarize even some of your main points here, what would you say is your philosophy on life and success?
What we're all after is basically one thing, which is fulfillment. And that can be broken in twofold, which is there's an inner blueprint within you, your DNA, you were destined to be somebody, and you have to accomplish certain dreams and ambitions. They're real. Just try to articulate as best as you can the higher level purpose of what it is there for, the why behind everything, what you're doing. So trying to align your conscious with your subconscious, essentially, because it's naturally gravitating towards this inner blueprint. But the more you could bring the blueprint into focus of what you're really supposed to accomplish down the road, the more you could actually bring it into fruition, I believe. And then the second component is peace within, because it's all for naught if you can't enjoy the ride along the way. And then at the end of the tunnel, when you do achieve the goals or whatnot, is this really going to fill you up inside? And that's going to be on those internal muscles of gratitude and all that stuff. If you can't be happy with what you have now, you're not going to be happy if you hit the button and get everything that you want in life.
Yeah. Really, really deep and powerful, Jaret. And that's going to conclude the knowledge on there. So what's exciting you now today? Like what's really getting you out of bed in the morning?
So awesome question. So right now I'm working on a few different ventures. For instance, we've got some new products in our Muscle Prodigy, community that are coming out. So we've got like a membership platform supplement line that we're creating, a new mobile app that we're working on. So that's obviously exciting. And then I've got a couple other ventures. For instance, I'm working on a business communications platform for businesses. So trying to perfect and model that. So
Awesome. Jaret, I'm excited to see all these projects come into fruition. It's been fantastic having you here on the show, learning more about your story and sharing your invaluable lessons here with my community. For the audience, you can definitely follow up with Jaret at jaretgrossman.com. If you just Google Jaret Grossman, it pops right up, but it's Jaret Grossman, Grossman, jaretgrossman.com. And you can see all his different coaching, book, mastermind products, and things like that. But Jaret, it's been a pleasure having you here on the show and learning about your story and journey.
Thanks so much, man. This is awesome. And keep doing what you're doing. You're doing amazing things.
Thank you for listening to the Knowledge for Men podcast. Hundreds of interviews and millions of downloads later, we're continuing to build an international movement, and we're just getting started. So if you enjoyed this episode, go ahead and leave a helpful review in iTunes, because it really helps the podcast grow so we can impact even more men in the world who need this. Guys, this is all about living with purpose, where every day you only do things that matter to you. You wake up, live with purpose, and take massive action towards the life you want. And always remember, love the life you have while creating the life of your dreams. Go to kfmfree.com to get a surprise bonus I've made for my listeners. Again, that's kfmfree.com for something that's changed my life, and I'm offering it to you for free. Also, check out my Amazon best-selling books that I've written for you to help you crush life at kfmauthor.com. Again, that's kfmauthor.com to see all the books I've created to help you break through in life. This is your host, Andrew Farabee, founder of knowledgeformen.com, and I'll see you in the next episode.